Namaste, my name is Sanat Kumar. Welcome back to the Manana Podcast. Manana is a Sanskrit word that means reflection or contemplation. In this podcast, I'll be sharing my deep, insightful reflections for you to contemplate and hence live a life of fulfillment. I hope you find great value in today's episode.
Welcome to the fourth part of the series Understanding Advaita. I think by now you've realized, at least intellectually, that non-duality is simply the reality of nature, and that understanding Advaita is equal to understanding reality. Non-duality would be an obvious conclusion after listening to part 1 of the series. That is, when you are viewing from the widest scope, everything is one, and that dualities exist in our perception. That is, duality exists only when you are zoomed in. So in this part, let us see why we need to understand Advaita. To answer that question, we need to understand the core of this question itself. And as already mentioned, Advaita is simply the best understanding of reality. That means Advaita is derived from understanding. Of course, it is the final essence of Jnana Yoga. If you recall from the part 3, there are 4 major ways or parts of or to yoga. Jnana Yoga, path of awareness; Bhakti Yoga, path of devotion or ultimate love; Karma Yoga, path of action or work; Raja Yoga or Kriya Yoga. They are not the same, but you can say one belong to the other. So the question, why Advaita, at the core points to this. Why Jnana Yoga, or why the path of awareness, especially when other paths are easier to understand? And that also points to why not that. I mean, why not Bhakti, Karma or Kriya path? Sure, all of them work. Ultimately, it is your choice. Let the choice be made with your awareness of your strengths. But before I tell you all that, I'll just give you a disclaimer. Yoga is not of types. Even though we call it that, yoga is not of types. It's like a spectrum of light which has beams of different wavelengths. Similarly, when we say yoga, they are just different spectrums, different wavelengths, that's all. Same light. It's just our brain likes to box them into categories. But life does not work that way, right? We like to have it that way. But all of these aspects are so interconnected that you cannot keep them separate. So even for an atheist, for example, who is basically a staunch believer in cause and effect, I already said he's a believer, right? He will be devoted to his work. You can't say he's not a devotee. And without awareness, nobody can function. Anybody who is taking any action is doing that based on their awareness, right? So awareness always has its play. In my opinion, balancing the spectrum of yoga is very essential, because going too intense only on any one path is highly unstable, dangerous, and leads to unnecessary suffering. Or we can simplify and put it as difficult. Okay, so it's ideal to balance yoga throughout its spectrum. Okay, all that being said, now let's continue. What do all these paths lead to? Liberation, enlightenment, or realization? Why is it called enlightened or realized? It's because whatever the path you choose, ultimately you realize. Or in other words, it's the awareness that makes you realized. Let us say, for example, one is following the path of karma, the path of actions or work. Ultimately, it is about realizing the non-dual nature of life through the work one does. In simple words, in Karma Yoga, one knows by doing. A Kriya Yoga practitioner will know or realize through inner experiences. If one is devoted to a deity, that is, if one is on the path of devotion, bhakti, he or she finally realizes, or at least the goal would be to realize that his or her choice of a deity is everywhere and in everything, or that substance is only thing that exists, right? That is the actual experience of the greatest of bhaktas, right? If we are talking about bhaktas, Bhakta Prahlada comes to mind, right? He showed everybody that he is seeing Vishnu everywhere. He sees Vishnu in him, in his father, in his pillar, in everything, right? That is the experience of a devotee. That is the ideal experience of a devotee, right? So think about it. There are devotees who were enlightened by Rama, Krishna, Shiva, etc. as their deity. That is, one realized Rama everywhere and one realized Shiva everywhere. So think about it. Only Advaita can explain that phenomena, right? And speaking of people on the path of bhakti, it reminds me of some ignorant cults and pseudo jnanis who like to show off by reciting the verses from Bhagavad Gita, and according to them, the whole purpose of studying from ancient texts is to help themselves to love and surrender to him or her. Sure, that is a purpose. However, it is not the only purpose of reading ancient texts. So, if it was not for awareness, why would Krishna preach to Arjuna what we call the Bhagavad Gita? If enlightenment or life was only about love or bhakti, he would just say, Arjuna, I love you. He wouldn't say, love me, love everyone, because then it would be preaching, right? He would just love Arjuna. He would make Arjuna love him. That's all. He would not ask him to love everyone or preach anything. Why would it take any other chapters which are not related to bhakti? He talked about jnana, he talked about karma, he talked about everything. He told everything. Why? Life is this way. One thing fuels another. Hence the need for balance. However, the proportion can be a subjective choice. And this balance can be achieved only if one is aware. When I say aware, it is to be understood. That is, everything from what to eat for healthy long life and self-awareness to the ultimate nature of reality, non-duality or Advaita. The path of awareness has its own drawbacks. Maybe we will talk about it in another part because this episode is already too long. But for now, you know that Advaita is to Jnana, is to awareness. It is the awareness that we must seek if it is your deliberate choice to understand Advaita or reality. And we now know that regardless of the path chosen, in the end, it is the awareness that we are seeking directly or indirectly. And when one is aware, he or she is naturally in love, naturally a worker, and naturally he or she becomes a master observer of inner experiences. So from this episode, I think we were able to see the whole overview and where Advaita connects to the whole picture. In fact, I hope you could realize it is the whole picture.
I hope you received excellent value in today's episode. To know more, head over to sanatkumarnahibi.com, and if you haven't already, check out my book The Flower of Fulfillment. Thank you for listening, and I wish you have a great day.